Just a quick one today, guys. Headlines only. I'm fighting some bouts of nausea, so we'll see how this goes. It could get pretty interesting. Always remember that nothing we say here is personalized trading advice. And we'd love to have you guys spread the word, join the channel, and tell people about us so that we can have a bigger footprint and accomplish more things and help more people. The NASDAQ falls 2% ahead of Fed decision as Microsoft, Tesla shares slide. And what we're seeing too, a lot of it, is that a lot of the strength in the markets that we have all been seeing is predicated by a small group of the biggest FANG stocks, a few of the bigger players on the market. They represent a bigger percentage of the gains we are seeing is a few specific stocks. But overall, the majority of stocks are actually suffering a little bit of weakness now, a lot more than they have been in any time coming up for the last couple of years. And because of the video we talked about earlier, a video or two ago, Elon Musk stock sales could total $18 billion by the end of the year. And like I told you in that last video, you don't ever worry about insider trading. If he sells all his shares, that does not mean that the stock price will go lower or that there's something wrong with the company or that he sees some issue or problem. Maybe he does. But I'm just saying that you don't want to put too much weight on any decision that an insider makes about selling or buying the shares of the company that they represent. And the other part of relating to the video we talked about the other day, Starbucks workers at 2 Boston cafes file for union election after the win in Buffalo. So you're going to see a lot more of Starbucks stores unionizing, but you'll also see this kind of movement among other aspects, other retailers, other businesses, franchises that are out there. There's going to be a push towards unionization, just like this one in Starbucks. Rent is going up again. Here's why. Economists say rent will be among the fastest growing portions of household expenses in the coming years. Yeah, rent will be a fast portion of household expenses, but so will food and everything you buy because of these inflation numbers that you're seeing. Meanwhile, most of the new housing that is under construction is for the high income portion of the market, which means that won't actually let a lot of the pressure off. It won't really make an opportunity or an option for people to buy at lower prices for the housing originally or for the rental levels. All of that's going to be increasing in price just as houses and rent have been. However, house prices, in my opinion, are going to come down dramatically. It will just be part of everything else with this big deleveraging that we're about to experience. Inflation will go up a bit more, like I told you, and it'll stop at that level, then it'll start coming back down. There's going to be deleveraging across every aspect of the economy, and that's going to really expose a lot of the pain points and risk points that are going to be affecting the majority of all people. Wholesale prices measure rose 9.6% in November from a year ago, the fastest pace on record. As I told you, that inflation will get greater and greater, and now I'm telling you that it won't go too much more from this point. It'll go up a little bit, but not too much more. People are worried about it way too much. Inflation is a temporary thing, and it's going to be declining coming up pretty soon. In my opinion, U.S. solar industry will grow 25% less than expected during 2022 thanks to the supply chain issues and rising costs, new report says. This is ESG impact. From CNBC Pro, U.S. solar industry will grow 25% less than previously forecast in 2022, according to a report released Tuesday by Solar Energy Industries Association and Wood Mackenzie. But here's a part that I wanted to really point out to you. They're going to address or reference the supply chain constraints and the rising costs. And of course that's true, but I always tell you something about this, when sometimes you'll see that it snows an extra foot of snow. And then every quarterly report, the management team's always talking about, and it snowed so much. So, we didn't do as well as we thought we would because there was, a lot of snow, or it was very hot weather, or whatever things going on. And that's what you're going to see in a lot of upcoming financial headlines and also a lot of the quarterly reports. U.S. solar industry will grow 25% less than expected during 2022. This is according to a report released by the Solar Energy Industries Association. And they go on to talk about lowered projections are due to supply chain constraints and rising costs for developers. Higher prices are affecting not just consumers who go into the grocery store and buy cheese and bread. It's affecting businesses too. And what you'll see is that every quarterly report from any financial company coming up, they're all going to cite inflation and supply chain constraints. And whether or not My point being, whether or not supply chain constraints and inflation really hurt the bottom line of a company or really affected their revenue levels, they're all going to say that it did. Whether or not it did, they're all going to say that it did. And so when you see something in an article or a quarterly financial report and they start talking about that, always look at it like a crutch or an excuse more than anything. That's the way I always look at things. It may have affected the business, but they're going to say it affected the business either way. And so this is an example of the types of things you're going to be seeing now as the supply chain constraints really start affecting the companies. At first, inflation and supply chain affected consumers mostly. And I mean, the supply chain constraints affected companies from day one. But I mean, it really was felt the most by general people more than the businesses, corporations. But it's an example of what you're going to see a lot more of are calls for less growth than expected. Because the combination of supply chain uncertainty and the rising costs will be putting a strain on every aspect of economic growth. Every company will be affected. Every individual who's a consumer in America will be affected by these things. And a big result of that, down the road a little bit, you'll see that growth rates for the USA will start to decline. Toyota to unveil $35 billion into battery-powered electric vehicles and roll out 30 models by 2030. Now, there's a time when Tesla was the electric vehicle. And at that time, if you think back how it was really like in terms of people's attitudes and opinions at the time, they were the EV play. If you're going to do that, you buy Tesla. And the reason I'm calling out this article is because there's a time when Tesla was the electric vehicle. It was kind of new and no one was looking at any other automaker to make electric vehicles. And then I told you that it would just become something that just spreads out. Everybody's going to compete with Tesla. And if you're the person who wants to buy a Tesla, you'll buy a Tesla. If you want to buy an electric vehicle, you can buy any of a number of them now. So you might buy a Tesla and you might not. That doesn't mean that you don't like Tesla or that you don't think that they're an amazing company, but you just don't want to pay for gas. And so therefore, Tesla will lose that portion of their prospects. People who would buy a Tesla that are doing it because they want to not have to pay for gasoline, they'll buy an electric vehicle. And there's going to be a lot of really aggressive marketing. There will be a lot of conventional automakers who are going to sell electric vehicles and give incentives for buyers to buy their new electric vehicle. These companies like Toyota, they want to get their cars out on the road to become truly viral. Like I told you about in the last video, when you see somebody driving a vehicle, that vehicle is advertising itself up and down the streets, and you can say, hey, I like that car. And ages ago, when I had the house across down here and it was a recording studio I did and it was upstairs, I had to climb up the steps to get to it, and I'd always be disheveled and sweaty by the time I filmed. I did a video then about Platinum, if you guys remember it. I don't know if it was exactly that video, but it was around that time. I made a joke about you don't want to get onto an airline that's powered by coal. And so when I saw this article here, I thought I'd print it off and mention it to you. United Airlines plans to purchase up to 100 hydrogen electric engines to put into small aircraft. And I don't know how long it's going to be before I would dare go near any kind of airplane that was not powered by proper jet fuel or proper propellers. But United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby says hydrogen electric engines are one of the most promising paths to zero emission air travel for smaller aircraft. And just based on that comment, I want to mention that I don't know that we need zero emission aircraft. Why is that a thing? Maybe we should worry about doing zero emission everything else first and then do that kind of last. It's not that small aircraft are really polluting the environment that much. And that's not why there's these huge tornadoes or why California is actually burning down or hurricanes are wiping out the whole Gulf Coast. I just think that there's other lower hanging fruit that we could pick first. And last one, and then I'm going to go throw up in the sink again. Instagram surpasses 2 billion monthly users while powering through a year of turmoil. And just the Instagram reminded me to tell you guys to join us on Instagram. I have an Instagram account now. My daughter used to always tell me, Dad, you got to get an Instagram account. And I always said, yeah, I know. I don't have the time. But yes, I know. And so Morgan's doing a great job. You guys see the stuff she's putting out. So really support the entire Peter Leeds team and support Morgan as being the newest team member of the Peter Leeds team to roll out the Instagram account, the Twitter account, our Facebook page, LinkedIn profile. You guys are to do us a great service if you would join us, and also subscribe to the channel because you want to not miss the video that I was planning today. And so I did this video instead, and you don't want to miss it because I want to talk about a little bit about my illness. I don't normally do that, not much, but I want to talk about the disease I have and the treatment that I'm doing now that is really helping me. So I've traveled all over North America for medical treatments, San Diego, Victoria, Atlanta, Toronto. And technically Toronto doesn't count because I live here, so that's not really travel. But we'll be talking about this new treatment I'm doing in the next video. So if you know anyone with MS, who's in a wheelchair maybe, or with MS at all, you're going to want to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out when we put out this new video. It's going to be maybe a game changer for you if you have MS.